Planning's too much work, and here we are live episode. Dude, it's only 146. This Life in Tech. I'm Jason.
Back in Gotham.
Not Metropolis.
And
Definitely not Metropolis. No, I can't even associate with an alien.
that was quick. We really jumped into that one quick.
Hi, TK. How are you?
Well, this is professional quality at its highest right here. We can't even get to the introductions without Gotham, Metropolis, Gotham. I feel like this.
Yeah.
But those bastards won't respond to us.
That's true.
Shocker.
I'll say this though. The only reason we can have these hijinks this early is because unlike when we were trying to go right through Google Hangouts live or Hangouts on Air rather, to YouTube, we always had technical difficulties. Since TK, you found StreamYard for us and we've been using that, this is seamless, man. Seamless 100%. It fires up instantly, no technical difficulties. So we have time to talk shit a little bit.
But this is the Google, right? This is at the height of what the Google does. The Google was doing something average to above average. And I truly believe, please Google people, feel free to reach out to us. But I think they've done a great job. They're like, hey, wait a second, these folks are doing this really well. Why do we have to put any brain power against it and let StreamYard do their thing?
Yeah. It's almost like Google is set on being the company that just builds frameworks for everybody else.
Yeah. I mean,
more power to them.
My dad would tell me when, he worked at General Electric his whole life, and he, whether it was some stuff to do with lasers or, like all this cutting edge technology, they would basically develop and get the patents and they would turn it loose to the world and let them develop it, get it to a higher standard, then bring it back in once it was developed, maybe buy a small company, do these things and then implement it all. And then they're like, hey, we invented it, let everybody else kind of build it. And they put a lot less man hours and brain power against it and still got a great result.
Yeah, right? Like you're doing the 80% of the effort with 20% of the labor. And then You're just turning it loose into the world. And in some maybe perverse way, there's something admirable about that, I think.
I think it's a great way to do business. There's never been anything more seamless than technology to try to fuel that kind of behavior.
Well, Jason, you remember when I was going to Singapore all the time, that company out there that we were doing with, that's all they do. As a matter of fact, then not only do they put the patent out there, then they provide you an avenue for labor that's at a reasonable rate to build out the patent and integrate that technology into your current. And then they help you sell it.
Yeah.
I mean, I Squared R out in Singapore, they're a government agency, but I tell you that from a research perspective, for anyone looking for patents and getting it developed, it's you can't beat it. No,
I don't think so, man.
There's a lot of Eastern European companies starting to use that model now, and a lot of it is it's quasi-government funded. They'll have like innovation centers, innovation zones, and they'll semi-quietly do a public-private partnership thing the best they can. And I think they're getting some results. And I think they're getting some real positive results because it especially in Eastern Europe, it's all driven around really young, smart people.
Yeah.
Motivated.
Which they have plenty of.
Yeah, most young, smart people are motivated, right? Because if nothing else, they're motivated to eat.
Yeah.
They don't have any cash, and it's like, hey, let's get together and let's do this, right?
Hey, even average intelligence with a high amount of motivation is going to, kick butt. They're going to figure it out.
Well, I'll tell you, so you guys know I went to this conference, and this was an ACM, so a professional society conference. And man, it was super small in Gatlinburg, and I guess they've been doing it the exact same way in the exact same spot for like 60 years, and this is just the thing. And what's nice about it is, so ACM obviously has like a bunch of different professional journals, and they all have their conference series and all that jazz. And then you have what are called regional ones. So like I'm in the Southeast region. Where Gatlinburg is, it's technically called the Mid-Southeast. So North Carolina is not part of it. It's like right on the edge of it. But we go up there, and one of my colleagues has been going up there off and on for the better part of 30 years. And he's like, hey, man, you should go up there and check it out. And I'm like, well, if I'm going, I'm going to take students. And if I take students, they can present some research. And then what's nice is but the university pays for all of it. I don't have to use my own professional funds. So like all of us get like a couple grand a year to go to conferences, and we don't have to do research. We don't have to do anything. The university gives you that money. If you take students and they present and you're not presenting, there's a different part of the university that pays for it because it's for students. And all I did was tell these guys, look, there's a million other dudes just like you waiting to get that internship or that job. What are you going to do to be different? Make this poster. Put your name on it. And I didn't tell them there was a competition until we actually got there. And just go do it. And that makes you one line different. So then we got there and we're all lined up and all these posters are lined up. And these are like professional 4 foot by 3 foot, right? And there's a format for them. It's a high-end deal. And ours looked good. And then I told them, like, listen, just so you know, when I come to these things, I win. And we need to win. Like, we didn't come here to lose, right, boys? And they got it, instantly got it. First time, second place, man. They'd never been to a conference before. They got $50. They're all happy. They're like, dude, buy us a couple basic cases of beer. I'm like, you're not 21. I can't buy you beer.
You can do that once on your way out to look for another job.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well said. I'm like, no, but I'll buy you a Coke. Like, is that what you wanted? Coke and a
Let's go to Five Guys. Come on. Get out there.
Yeah, there was a Five Guys right there, too.
Well, it's good for them. Good for them. I mean, it's it's a big positive. They don't. A lot of the folks don't get how valuable it is to do things like this.
Yeah.
My new Mika over here at the credit union, I had her do a presentation on identity theft. At this, we sponsored some event at a library where evidently they do a lot of different things for the community, but we always sponsor something there. So I said, hey, go do something on identity theft. She got rave reviews on it, and she's going to write a little paper. I mean, it's stuff that a lot of us already know. Like, hey, how about you turn off ad blockers because of all those cookies that are downloaded? You're going to get crushed. And had her show going to like TMZ, which is by far the worst. I mean, they anyone that goes to TMZ, you're going to be tracked forever. There's like 100 different tracking cookies that go out there. So she went through and showed the difference of two different ones, Ghostery and Privacy Badger. They do things each one is a little bit different. Privacy Badger is pretty much hardcore, so it's going to block it hard. But she got a whole lot of confidence from doing the research. She worked on her presentation. She presented it to me like 3 times, and I told her different things that were going on in terms of like how to present. And so I said, okay, when you're practicing with your family this weekend, give them this. And so on the Sunday beforehand, they all had popcorn while she was doing it. Every time she said or fidgeted, they started throwing popcorn at her.
There's a big pile of popcorn at her feet after she gets done.
I said, but that's good. I mean, so you understand, what you're doing and when you're doing it. So she also used other words that were repeated, which were crotch. I said that's no different than saying and at this point. So, but working on that presentation skills helps, and most of it's just look relaxed.
Well, tell me what you think about this. Dan, you and I think TK, you've had a lot of experience in startups, and there's something unique about being tossed into a situation that you don't know how to get yourself out of from the beginning, and you're forced to either walk away and defeat or figure it out real quick, right? And I'm just talking technology. Just how do I build this? How do I implement this? How do I wire this thing up? How do I make this work? And man, that's really hard to replicate unless you're like in that environment doing that kind of stuff. But I found that in these situations where, let's say students, for lack of a better term, are forced to figure out how to articulate an idea, which is all based upon them having read something and synthesized it, right? It kind of replicates that. And that's what you're talking about, Dan. That's what like these guys figured out pretty quick. Because I didn't talk to them about it. I'm just like, look, you got to do the research. You got to read this stuff, write it the notes. Here's the format. And I'll organize it onto this poster and make it look the way it's supposed to look. But that's all I'm doing. I'm not doing anything else. Absolutely. I'll organize it. And that's it.
Absolutely. It comes down to providing some level of stress. Mm-hmm. That stress, that fight or flight thing that's going to get there, it's going to cause you to do one of those two things. And hopefully they figure out a tool, a crutch, something that they can grasp onto to be able to push them forward. When growing up playing baseball, everyone always says the same thing. Oh, practice makes perfect. And
nope.
I say no, it's perfect practice makes perfect. If you don't simulate real events and how you're going to react to them, then you're not going to succeed. And we do this in technology when we go to do tabletops. And tabletops to me are the lowest level of simulation for incident response. You actually have to do something. Go take some people offline. See what happens. If you want to do business continuity planning, you don't do it in a boardroom. You actually go and take a handful of people and guess what? You got ransomware today. Or, I don't know, we just had a gas leak in the building, and now this building has to shut down. What are we going to do? If you don't do it in the real world when it really happens, what are you going to do? And I try to do that same thing with my students and my young employees, so that way they can feel some of that stress.
I think it comes back to this concept that you're never going to rise to the occasion. You're always going to sink to your level of training. Right, when you get in, right? And so, what are you willing to do to train? Right? I mean, it's like you'll hear football players go, "Hey, I get paid to practice. I don't get paid to play the games. Like, that's the fun part, right? I get paid to practice because that's hard, right?" And I think that concept of perfect practice makes perfect, right? I've said that for my whole adult career, or heard it and then said it and then put it out to students and stuff like that. But I think, Dan, when you go back to this, or both of you, when you go back to this, hey, you get folks that traditionally aren't aware or wanting to be out in public in front of people, right? And so they start with the everything like that. That's what you're also doing, is helping to create lifelong learners. And you guys have heard me say this before. When I went to Blackbird, I really was into technology, but there's being into it, and then there's contemplating it in a way you never would have, because you've got to put it out to other people, and you can't. They're going to trust your opinion, and more importantly, they're going to use what you teach them in the real world, and you can't let them down.
Yeah, right.
Because of that, you have to. I got a breadth and a depth of technology understanding, to the point where, hey, I don't do technology every day as far as digging in, getting my hands dirty with coding, or really researching deeply. But when somebody starts talking to me about, hey, we got this great idea and we're doing this, I'm at the point now I will hand them a marker and go, forget the slide deck, because I don't care about that. Here's a dry erase marker. Please put it up on the board, because you have to understand things at that level. And whether it's Cooper and myself and the others that were there at the time, everything we did was on a dry erase board, because what we said is, hey, we know what we're doing, and we want you to know what you're doing. And there's a depth of knowledge and interaction that only comes from becoming a lifelong learner. And what you did this week was set those students on a path of lifelong learning, right? That's what forcing people to say, hey, I'm going to go research something and put it out in public, is they're not just trying to pass a test at this point. They're trying to pass a metaphorical test, but they're also fighting their inner demons not to look stupid in public. Because regardless of what people say, and I can stand up here and say, hey, look, stop worrying about what other people think, is none of your business. That's nice to say, but it still affects all of us to some varying level, right? And I think the older you get, the less that becomes important, right? But at age 19, 20, 22,
or 152.
How many? Oh, 52. Thank you. You're being nice.
152.
152. Yes. Exactly. Perfect. Hey, the Gettysburg Address was tough. Leave me alone. But look at, like, this week, Instagram is contemplating taking likes off of, globally now. Like, they're going to do it in the U.S. Well, let's go one step further than that. Why didn't Facebook, Instagram, social media et al. Put a thumbs down button or a dislike button in there? Because we want you to experience various levels. This was the thought process, that you're only going to experience varying levels of success, right? What we're not doing is saying, hey, that was a really bad statement, bad idea. And when you're in education, especially when you start at the graduate level and people start, you have peers that review your things, they're not going to be like, well, I don't like it as much as I like the other thing. They're going to be like, that idea was patently insane. Right. Or nice try, go work harder. Right. And so I do think it cracks me up, because it's like, hey, we're just going to put more bubble wrap around things and we're going to remove the likes, because, and with my daughter at 15 and everything like that, and I heard her say to one of her friends, don't compare yourself to other people. Right. And I was like, all right, cool. I know I'm not doing this perfectly, but today I got it right, because at least she understands at some level, and it's going to creep in because we all do it. Right. I'm 152 years old, and periodically you're like, wait a second, like, why didn't everybody like that? Right. And so how do you diminish that? How do you tamp that down in yourself? And it's that concept of, how do you fight your inner self? Right. And
exactly.
You got your good self and your bad self, and you just want the good self to win out most days.
Well, and along those lines, I think we can all look back and think, oh, this was the moment when I learned how powerful I am. You know what I mean? Like, no, yeah, I can get put into a situation and think my way out of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And to be able to construct those scenarios, as artificial it is, this conference that these kids went to, that potentially for some of them, maybe not everybody, was a moment. Because the one nice thing about this conference, and I've never been to anything like this before, it was 100% student focused. There was very little faculty presentations, very little professional stuff. It was undergrads and a handful of graduates, mostly undergrads. And in fact, there was a couple schools from Kentucky, check this out, where they were high school students enrolled full-time in university, and they were getting dual credit. And they were actually like on-campus university residents. That's phenomenal. These kids were kicking ass.
Right.
And they were like 16, 17 years old. There's nowhere else you're going to get that experience. Right. And they're up there just putting their idea out. And yeah, it's a basic idea. It's scaled down to for what you would expect for a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old to be able to come up with and communicate. But dude, they're up there doing it. And they were good. They were really good.
It's the one thing that, like, one of the things I had to tell my new Miko was this. I said, look, you're up there.
Is that what you call her? Or is it like you just...
he calls her that to her face.
Yeah, exactly. That's what
right now,
Dan, right?
Right now, her nickname is Sprinkles. But I didn't come up with a nickname. Someone else wound up saying it. So I was telling her the whole idea about, Skippy and some of the other people that, how they want to get it. She's like, well, I want a nickname. I said, well, right now it would wind up being Sniffles, because you've called out sick the past 2 days. And she's like, so here we are in New York. And so for those that don't know, that's what, so when Wally Pipp got injured, who used to be the first baseman for the New York Yankees, and this guy named Lou Gehrig took over. So Lou Gehrig used to call Wally Pipp after he got sick. He started calling him Sniffles. He goes, hey, Sniffles, why don't you just go sit this one out? I got this. So she goes, I don't like that nickname. I said, then don't ask for one when this is where you're at right now. So one of the other guys
every day
said, he goes, what's that thing that Dan calls you? Sprinkles? And I'm like, now that's perfect, because that was by accident. She's like, well, it's better than Sniffles. True. So anyway, what I wound up saying to her, I said, you're up there on stage. There's a power in the microphone. People are already going to assume you're the expert. So just stick to your script. You have the power. People are naturally going to want to listen. So when you're presenting, you're just talking. Forget what's on the slide, so to speak. You have a couple bullet points. You're talking. It's a conversation. And you're going to get your feedback by seeing how the people react. And then if it doesn't look like it's catching on, just go to the next slide. You start to stumble, take a sip of water, but just talk to them. They are naturally going to want to listen.
People want to assume competence, right? When somebody stands up in front of you, and if you look, probably 80% of that audience, especially you get out in some sort of public setting where you're doing a keynote or something like that, 80% of that audience is completely baffled, panicked that you would volunteer yourself to be in front of people to talk. And they're like, I'm just glad they're not asking me.
Right. I said, to be the expert in the room, you just have to be that much smarter than everyone else.
Yeah.
That's it. So, when you go to talk to them, just talk. Just talk. You're the expert right now.
It's the concept of, I always say this, most people spend most of their entire life with wanting to appear to be competent, Why don't you take 10, 20 minutes of that time when you're trying to appear to be competent and go actually become competent at something, and he said you don't have the delta between unconscious incompetence and even conscious competence oftentimes is not that wide.
No.
And I had to remind her that. She goes, well, who am I to be talking? I said, what do you mean?
You're Sprinkles. Come on, girl.
I said, you just performed a pen test and it was successful. You presented it to the entire executive management team. And what was their response? We understood everything you actually said, and we pay companies tens of thousands of dollars and we never understand anything. You explained everything that you did, and we now know 4 things that we better take care of right now. We don't get that. Pay tens of thousands of dollars to professional companies. So what do you mean you don't feel comfortable? You are now an expert in their eyes. So
I would say like this, not so much an expert. You are now a corporate resource.
Yeah.
And that is important because that is getting you on your way.
Well, she now writes the board report that I wind up presenting every month. We keep working on it and iterating it. Okay, do this, because they didn't have anything formal. I said, look, you're the source of all of the cybersecurity knowledge in the credit union.
Right. I that's fantastic. And like I said before, and I tell people all the time, it goes back to being good at talent development. And how do you have to do it? It comes back to when you guys were on 145 by yourselves. I was driving back from Charleston and did a big leadership event at the Citadel with a bunch of really cool folks. We just had a great time with the students, right? And somebody in the group was talking about servant leadership, and I said, just get rid of the word servant, right? Because leadership in itself implies that you're giving of yourself to others, and that I think is once you get that down. Like you could easily have her write that and take credit for it, right? Solely, right? But you're a made guy, so to speak, right? And so having others stand up and brief this and do this, you still get the same net effect that the people, your audience, the C-suite in this place, they need to know this information. Well, how do they get it? Let's go get it from young, smart people, have them be critiqued and have them grow so that they're better tomorrow than they were yesterday. And I mean, that's, it's at the heart of everything we talk about here every week.
Yep.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
And what I've realized, and Jason and I, we've talked about this. Pen testing is an entry-level job at this point. Mm-hmm. But when you do it right, and then they're there full time, and you give them vulnerability management, that if they're worth their salt, so to speak, they're going to go, oh my gosh, we have how many vulnerabilities? Now, they don't know if that's good or bad. They just see a big number and they go, we are in a lot of trouble. We need to get this fixed. Gets that motivated, and they start researching it, and they have to start talking to people, and they start having to learn how to negotiate with people that are peers and people that are their superiors, because they have to convince on the systems administration side that are, senior level people there, that this needs to get fixed. So they've got to figure that out. And when they start holding the meeting, which is, the same thing I had, it's the same thing I do over and over again with every new company and starting off the security practice, let them handle the meeting. It's your meeting.
Yeah. Well, no, I think you're spot on. Pen testing is no longer a technical endeavor. The tools are too powerful. Which is a good thing, right? So let's leave it what it is. It's really, like you said, negotiation, and it's information brokering. Yeah. Like, how can I make things that are point and click time snapshots of let's say a vulnerability, and how do I turn that into something that's actionable for somebody that doesn't understand what a vulnerability is and shouldn't need to? That's why they got you, right?
Right.
I think it comes back, Dan, what you it's like vulnerability management is the job. Pen testing is a skill inside that job spec. But really, what you just said, and I was talking about this when I did that thing for you in Indianapolis. It's managing from the middle, right? How many CIOs, how many CISOs don't have a big impact or with what goes on? They go into their the executive team and they get their 5 minutes and they have to go hide again. And we come back to the same old conundrum. CEO says to the CIO or the CISO, hey, are we good? And they say yes. Well, what you say and what I hear as a CEO is two different things, right? When you say we're good, a lot of CEOs that are not tech people are like, we're good. We have our threat landscape is zero, right? Because that guy just told or girl just told me we're good. When in actuality, what you mean, Dan, is, hey, based on the fact that we can't be talking about nation state threats, we're not doing this. You gave me X amount of money, which translated into X amount of security. We're good with that, right? And then there's a lot of times not even close to being a real discussion about the true vulnerabilities. And as a security professional, I asked an audience, there's a couple, 300 people there. I'm like, how many of you go in and ask your executive team, ask the board, what is your tolerance for risk, right? And how are we going to determine that, right? And Dan, you and I both in our board members are like zero. I'm like, okay, that's completely unrealistic, right? And my comeback to them now is always like, okay, I hear you, but when you invested in this company, you had some sort of risk modeling that you did that says, hey, under these circumstances, I'll push my pennies into the middle of the room and I'll invest in the company, right? We have to have that for security as well, right? Because we're not going to, if China wants to attack us, we're done, right? I mean, and again, I think, Dan, you say it great. It's like the average vulnerability lives on a system for, roughly the better part of a year, right? 3 quarters, 270 days. If I can manage that down to 30 days, but what it requires is I'm not going to protect everything. And I don't care if you beat the daylights out of my website twice a week. I'm going to put it out in the cloud and I'm going to let Amazon, Cloudflare, Azure, whoever take care of fighting that battle. It's an unattended task that I don't have to pay for. So yay for me. But right. I need to know what you find ultimately important. What are the crown jewels? And let's go defend that and then layer everything else out so that we're that bigger threat, that nation state, that highly funded corporate or anonymous, like however you define that big threat, they've got to at least go through some layers of defenses, right? We're not just like, hey, here it is, come and attack this really bad thing. But I think it all comes back to how are you training your people? Like what mindset are you giving your people? What does success look like? And in cybersecurity, we no longer can live in a 100-0 mentality. Right? Yeah. In the past.
It's really funny when you say, the stuff about the board, because, we had our board planning session and, the CEOs, because in my write-up, I said, hey, we are, our cybersecurity framework and how we address, common overall, how we would address the most common aspects of cybersecurity is immature. He goes, we can't say that. I'm like, why not? It's true. So essentially, I had to reword it and said, according to the NIST cybersecurity framework, we are less than baseline. So,
right. Less than baseline.
But, so they were all giving me a hard time. So now I present to the board. And there's things that we do well. There's things that we don't do well. I mean, this is the whole aspect for, building.
That's why they hired you.
Program, right?
Right.
They're at that point to where they have to provide focus. So I finished presenting and the board essentially said, that was amazing. We understood everything. They spent more time talking about technology in that particular point than they probably have their entire lives. They didn't want me to leave. And one of the other, one of the board members, so for those that don't know, in a credit union, the boards are made up of members. And so and they're elected, so to speak. So we've got a couple of doctors that are on the board, and one of them is he's got I think it's a doctorate in economics or something like that, kind of like the guy that you're doing work for, TK, type of thing, and he's Greek, so he is always bashing people when it comes to their stats and things of that nature. And on mine, I get up there and I'm like, here it is, here's why, here's how we did it. And he's like, this was the best presentation I've seen yet. But the thing is, they're all saying this was great. I just delivered them the worst news they could possibly ever imagine. And they
didn't. You did not deliver them the worst news. Delivering the worst news is telling them something that's not true.
Right.
To try to make people feel better. Right. What you did is walked in the middle of the room and you didn't say, hey, this is all effed up. You said, here is where we're at. Here's the snapshot in time. Here's where we're at. And I guarantee you followed right up with, and here's what we're doing to get better.
Yep.
But you have to be an active participant in success by pulling your head out of the sand and assuming that we're 100% good. And that's, I'm sure that's exactly what, maybe not in those words.
Pretty much. And then their questions were, because, in a maturity framework, you've got, 1 to 5 basically, or 0 to 5. And so their question was, why aren't we going to be a 5 anywhere in maturity? And I said, it's not realistic. I said, we may have some things that might peak there, but our goal to be across the board is a 3 when it comes to our maturity level, because that means we at least understand the technology risks. Some things, I said 5, think about 5 is you have to predict. And prediction is hard. And based on our size, I said if we got closer to 20 billion in assets, we would be able to do something along those lines. But we're not. We are 4 billion. So let's get to 3. Right now, we're not. And some things we're going to do better than others. To me, I want to be able to get each of you as a board member to understand the risk and understand what we're doing about the risks in order to be able to address them. And that's it. I said, right now we can't, because we're not anywhere that we should be. But by the end of, here's where we're going to be by the end of next year, based on, you approving the budget. Here's where we're going to be in 2021. Here's where we're going to be in 2022. By the end of 2022, we should be a 3 across the board, as long as we provide the appropriate amount of resources. And boom, done. But those were their questions. Why not a 5?
But that's reasonable, right?
Right.
It's reasonable based on how executive teams and non-technical people of executive teams and boards have been educated or not educated, right? It's been the line of, I can't even say it's the line of BS, right? It's a vicious circle, right? That CISO CIO says, hey, we're good. And then they don't sleep well every night because they understand that they're good and what their boss is good are 2 different things. There's a huge delta between that. And look at Target as an example. Target had a breach, and they had 2 choices: go and replace everything in their POS system and all that stuff, right, to get chip readers and all the other things they need to do. And they're like, no, it's only going to cost us $25 million. People aren't going to stop shopping at Target. So let's work on the maturity model, and we'll replace the hardware during its normal life cycle replacement.
Yeah.
Right.
That's exactly what they did.
They didn't lose any customers. Right. No. But if you look at whether it's Experian or there used to be Dan, you'll probably remember this. Remember back, this was a Beltway company probably 6-8 years ago, HB Gary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember?
They came out anonymous. Yeah. Good
right. Job. Yeah, exactly. They were an up-and-coming security company, right? And in fact, they were a competitor of the company I was working for at the time. And they came out and basically poked the bear. Right? And said, F you, Anonymous, and all these other groups. And 2 days later, all their crap's all over the internet. Right? And they unceremoniously went out of business.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If I'm a retailer, for example, and I have a breach, okay, I'm going to do the best I can. We're going to get better at the things we're supposed to get better at, like handling people's credit cards and crap like that, right? But even still, I mean, what's the liability on a credit card these days? Very little to the consumer, right? $50, right? I mean, for the most part, right? It's, debit card, whatever, it's about $50, right? And most banks will eat that to keep you as a customer. So shortly after that, Target went into the debit card business, right? Because they're like, hey, we're going to try to mitigate that. We'll give you 5% back. We'll give you 5% back so we can market the daylights out of you. But now we're becoming an active participant in that piece of success. If you're in the trust business, right, like HB Gary, Experian, all those things, that becomes a different conundrum. So how do I do that, right? Dan, you're in the trust business. Right, in a financial institution, we're trusting in you into a certain indirect fashion that all my money's going to be there. It's not going to go away. All right. And yes, there's insurance and everything else, but that trust that hey, you guys have the fences up and the doors are locked and everything like that. That's where the executive team loses their mind because, we got a CMO probably that's telling everybody, hey, we got to talk about it this way. We got to talk about it that way. And it all starts with what you trained Sprinkles or Sparkles or whatever her nickname is this week.
Sprinkles.
You started training her on how to manage from the middle. Right. And that's the most important skill in any company is how do I manage up? How do I manage down without taking my peer group out of the mix as well? You did that latently as well this week, Jason, by putting those kids to work together and getting them to present together. Somebody's good at this, somebody's good at that. Let's all work to our strengths so that as a group we come to a common goal. That sounds a lot like going to work.
Yeah. It is.
And that's, when you start thinking in higher minded terms, that's really what you're doing. And we have to start with the micro of 1, 2, 5 people to get to the point where you can go be a CEO someday and say, I got 1,500 people that work for me. How are we all going to turn in generally the same direction and walk? Right.
Well, right. And that's essentially what, to me, the maturity model is. It's realizing that I don't need to think about 5. All I need to think about is the next 5 minutes. And let me get to the next 5 minutes, the size of my milestone, and then I have a rough idea where I'm going after that. But I'm only going to deal with this 5 minutes. That's all I got to do. Well, just get to the next 5 minutes.
And it comes back down to the things that we've talked about previously. It's I am going to start being the person I want to be 5 years from now. Right?
That's right.
Start now, then I'll be there. And when presenting very complex information that these board members are business people, right? They don't understand anything, but they understand 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And
everybody does. That's why when people go, "Oh, I can't explain this to," like use the NIST model. If people can count from 0 to 5,
right? So then there are other questions are like, well, why are you focusing on access control and not integrity monitoring? Well, I can explain. Well, there's blah, 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 blah. This, based on our money, this is the biggest bang for our buck today. They understand these things. You don't have to make it overly complex. And the best part is all they know is, okay, you have a plan and you're executing. And I tell this to Sprinkles, even Mika, who's out there right now, she picked up her world and went over to Hong Kong. And
doing it.
Yeah. You didn't know this?
Yeah. I think it's like this, and people, when I'm at conferences or when I speak, people laugh, or even when I'm coaching people laugh at first until they start thinking about it. I would say I'm one decision away from the right one. Right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Because most executives get paralyzed the more senior they go up. It happens on either end. The problem is in the middle. Those mid-level managers are sometimes lunatics because they want to hey, I've been given decision authority. I'm going to go decide stuff, right? And sometimes there has to be a thought process between, that filter between your brain and action. But on both ends, the junior people never want to make a mistake, and extremely senior people, executive, anybody with a C in their title for the most part, they get to the point where like I've got to make a decision, and they get paralyzed, right? Because they've got to be perfect. I got one chance. Well, and they want to make it in not the 5-year model, but they want finality. Hey, I want to tell people what to go do, and I want them to be done. I want that to be the last decision I have to make, right? What I say is while everybody else is sitting around trying to be perfect, I'm going to take one step in generally what I know to be a good direction. And when I do, there are turns. Right, my perspective changes, the horizon changes, but most importantly, I'm seen to be a person of action. I'm on my way, and that's the core of leadership is I don't have to have all the answers. We have a structure for long-term growth, for long-term success, however you define it. But I don't know I know where we want to go. And it's why we have everybody working with us, because I don't know everything. I just know that, hey, we've decided that's where we're going for whatever reasons we're going to go there. But helping people to go, hey, I just need to make one good decision today, right? Or in this moment, because I want action, right? And we will bias action, right? And that was, having people stand up, having people present, all those things when they're junior starts to bias action, right? They couldn't
That's right.
behind themselves, right? Dan, you couldn't hide the thing. You told the board, I'm going to have a bias for action. We're going to do this today because I get a lot of information out of this. I grow. Our model grows this way, and we're growing towards this, right? I don't, and you do a quiet sales pitch to be fully funded in your case.
Mm-hmm.
One way or another, I'm going to get the funding I need.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
One way or another. It's funny how I always seem to get the amount of money that I need to at the time in which it's necessary.
Well, it's not
funny how that works, right?
Most of the time when organizations don't properly fund something, it's not the organization's fault. Every now and again, you have, people that have an agenda, right? But for the most part, if you're not getting properly funded, if you're not, I'll use in a more childish way, if you're not getting your way, right? Because Dan, that with you, that's what it comes back to. You were going to get your way, right?
There can be only one.
Right, exactly. Yes, we know. Oh boy. But you have to be able to articulate a vision that makes sense. And in the absence of everybody else coming in and being prepared, really, because Jason, that's what you did with those young folks. You said, hey, your job today is to show up and be prepared tomorrow, right? And you put them on the path to success. If you can come in and competently explain why I need what I need when I need it, especially when you're talking about the security of a company, especially, I think you're going to get what you need, because you're not saying, hey, I need $1 billion. I need this today. I need this tomorrow. And I'm going to need this 6 months from now. So here's how I need the money rolled out. That makes people comfortable. That makes a C-level guy comfortable. It's like, hey, I get it. I need $30 million. Well, do I need it all tomorrow? No, I need to have that over 5 years. Okay, that's a different thing. Now you've put everybody at ease that you're not a crazy man, right? Because crazy man wants that money in a big pile so he can spend it as his discretion.
I couldn't spend $30 million tomorrow.
No, but that's what I'm saying. But over time, you're saying, I want all this. And a lot of people are like, I want to have my whole budget defined for that. It's not reality.
Yeah,
or I want to have my whole people figured out.
It's a great thing because, I know there's certain things that I can get away with and certain things can't, right? So, what I know is when I take a look at like vulnerability management products that are out there on the market today, doesn't matter if you want to go Rapid7, Nessus, which is, the Tenable folks, it doesn't really matter. They all scan and they all do a pretty decent job scanning, but they also all do something pretty equally that sucks, which is their reporting, right? The reporting on all of these things, I think, is absolutely atrocious. So I go to OpenBoss. I will spend in my vulnerability scanning because they're just as good as scanner. And guess what? Their reporting sucks. So why would I go spend $100,000 on a Rapid7 when I can spend 11 on OpenBoss to have their support in the event of that? And then I'll go spend $30,000 on a company called Kenna, which takes any of the vulnerability management products out there and does a phenomenal job at reporting. So I'll spend less than 50 and have a complete solution, and I didn't have to go and break the budget. The reason is that I think most people that are in this somewhat startup-like phase of bringing a company into the cybersecurity, century that we're in, they want to go have the big name.
Yeah.
They're solving a symptom rather than a fundamental problem that the organization exists, which is I need bodies and I need the actual core competency. I'm looking to develop competencies in the organization, not I don't need the who's who.
You're looking to develop core competencies. A lot of folks are looking to buy core competencies. Yeah. Right? You can't do that.
And they want to take a bulldozer approach to it. And then I think your point's good about getting your own way. It's for me.
No, it's the
well, that's true. But when there's a sense of friction that it's not going my way, I think our maturity model of where we're at is it's not because I'm not being forceful enough. It's because I'm not aligned with where the water's flowing. You know what I mean? And there's a way to get what you want without being a pardon me, without being a bulldozer. Because bulldozers really don't get what they want for very long. I mean, you run out of dirt to bulldoze, right?
18 months to 24 months is a typical corporate lifespan of a senior person that is just a patented bully.
Yeah.
And most people that are patented bullies inside of an organization, there's some level of incompetence that they're trying to hide. Right? There's a big piece of them that's not centered with the rest of them.
Exactly.
And it basically bears itself out, and then people start to walk because they no longer feel like they're being guided. They feel like they're being pushed, and one of the places they can be pushed is out.
Yeah.
How much unemployment is there? Statistically, there's zero, right? Less than 3%, around there. We have full participation in the labor force, and that is even more highlighted in cyber, right? The CISO of Chicago said the best line I've heard in a while. So if you hire somebody to come in and fulfill a cyber job for you today, you're essentially stealing them from somebody else because there's zero unemployment in cyber. Right? So people can vote with their feet, right? And they do. Right? How many times are you going to show up and feel badly about what you're doing before you go somewhere else where you're not going to feel badly about what you're doing? And I think that really, at the core of it, drives good or bad corporate behavior, right? And I think a lot of times CEOs in particular, if they're a decent CEO, but they're just trying to hold it together, right? Because we all talked about my belief that a lot of CEOs show up by accident. Either they were a great number two, either COOs, CFOs, or so on, and they got elevated into that position, or through some level of corporate nepotism, they got put into a job that they're completely unqualified for, because whether it's the board chairman, investor, however that works, you end up with this person in your company. And I'll give you a good example. When we were at Silent Circle, we had a chief product officer, unbelievably smart guy, right? If you sat down one-on-one with him, he was really gifted. But you know what he's really good at? Being the chief product officer, being a visionary in a big company where he's got a full team of people and he has that reliance mechanism where he can delegate, right? He's really good at that, and he's killing it right now, right? But he wasn't so good when all of a sudden, hey, you got a limited budget, and there's of the 20 things that you want to do, you're gonna have to do 10 of them yourself because you just don't have the people. He wasn't. Right. It wasn't. He was a square peg, right? And we needed round right then.
Yeah, but he was big enough that he could put that round peg through that square hole.
No. I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about the CPO at the time. And but it's if you sat down and spent time with the guy, because I did, because it was my job to try to get him to a point where he was functional. He was just so uncomfortable at this point in his career because he thought it was a step back, right, where he had to basically pull things into the middle of the room and do them himself. Right now, I can say that, hey, do I enjoy that? Nah, probably not. Right. But if you volunteer for it, you volunteer yourself into it, you better at least go, okay, I get that. And so right. what happened was that I think the 5 or 6 people that he had working for him, he needed 20 people working for him. And those five or so people were so task saturated because it wasn't that he was unwilling to do the work. He had a model of success that wouldn't work where we were at because we just weren't mature enough to do it.
Right.
And it ultimately led to him having to opt out of working there because he was hurting himself, right? I mean, I felt bad for the guy because he emotionally was not in a good place every day because he was also getting tuned up regularly by the leadership.
Yeah. Yeah, well, exactly. That's an extreme version of the friction I think we're talking about, where right. If you're not sensing that you're the salmon going the wrong way up the stream, it ain't the stream that's to blame here, right? Well, I mean, when you really step back and look at it.
And in that case, he wasn't even the salmon going upstream. The engineering staff was trying to turn the river around, right? We were trying to make the water flow uphill, and nobody was caught. Like everybody, if I raised my hand and be like, "Hey, this is a massive engineering mistake," everybody like, "No, go fix something else that's not broken." Right?
Right. That's true.
Because it comes into the, and here's the other kind of hard play is, and tell me if you've seen something different, but in my experience, this concept of, hey, here's the guys that are building the widget, right? And what happens if we have to get rid of them? Right? We're not talking about marching everybody in the dev team / engineering staff out the building. We're saying we got to cut the head off because we're not going in the right direction, and nobody will listen in that arena at the time. Well, I've seen more than one CEO now go, I can't, like, we're going to stop what we're doing. No, we're not. We're not going to develop for a while. We're going to keep all the mid-level people and junior people that are keeping the wheels on the cart, so to speak, and we're going to go get competent leadership that wants to work with the organization, right? That doesn't want to be. There's a certain ego and hubris that comes with the fact you can't fire me because I'm in charge of engineering, and everything will go to crap, right?
I would agree with you. This is the thing that people forget. Okay, so the head of engineering is gone. Okay, so we're not going to worry about features and functionality of new things that are going to happen. So guess what we get to do? Work on our backlog of bug fixes, which is just going to stabilize the product and create a better foundation for when the new head of engineering comes in. They don't have to go, oh my gosh, we've got 1,000 bugs we got to fix.
And make sure that everything that we can do from a due diligence perspective, what's our network map look like? What's our network security on that piece look like? How's our overhead doing? And it goes back to that thing. And I ask people, like, what's your exit strategy? Like, I go in and talk to a company and they're like, well, we're not going to sell. Well, you better build the company like you're going to sell, because if you're not doing that, you're planning on being an employee. It's like people that don't comment code, right? John Callis said it the best. If you don't want to comment your code, you're destined to manage that code for the rest of your life, right? And people like look at that, as job security. Well, if I don't comment, they always have to come to me to ask questions. Well, no, they always have to keep you there, and you're not going to grow and be allowed to do anything else because you're not given a roadmap of how this works, right? You pull somebody like Stoney in and say, hey, go find everything on the network map. One of the places I worked, he found like 12 servers that people didn't even know existed. And it was just doing the detective work to build a competent map. Because when people come in to look at the company to invest in it or buy money or to buy the company, they're going to say the financial people are going to go in and tear that piece up and do the due diligence over there. And everybody's prepared to do that. Right? That's the one thing that, hey, let's get all our finances in a row. But then when all the due diligence people for the technical piece come in and they're like, that's how you lose valuation, right? Or people just don't take you seriously because you're not planning for the future. More importantly, you've now taken yourself structurally out of a position that when something goes wrong, how do I know when and where it's gone wrong, right? And that's, I think, the bigger portion is because most of these people are going to make the assumption, and I think it's a good baseline assumption to make, even though it'll never happen. If I'm going to come in and buy a company, I'm going to say, look, I'm going to make the assumption that everybody that builds our widget, everybody in the dev team, all that stuff is going to quit the day that we buy it. How long before we can be fully functional again? And if everything is not properly documented, then that delta is huge. And why it's going to at a minimum take away from the final number we can get to be successful and sell the company. But more important, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I think we've kind of talked about this before. It's to me, it's the idea of if I'm in tomorrow, what would I have wished I had done today? Because that's what I better get doing today.
And great today.
Yeah, and the first time I was part of selling a company, it was shocking to me that the due diligence tech people came in and wanted to have like an all-day meeting to find out what our tech was, and we're like, dude, you just got to read this spreadsheet. We've been keeping track of everything from day one, down to the MAC address. I mean, we know where everything is and what its purpose is, how it runs, the last time it was refreshed, so forth. It's all right here. We don't need an all-day meeting. You just got to read. And these dudes were baffled by it. Baffled.
Well,
we're like, what do you mean?
Going up and going,
Well, like this guy came to us and he's like, well, how many systems do you think you have? Like you were talking about with Stoney. This guy says, well, how many systems do you think you have that you don't know what they do? And we're like, what in the fuck are you talking about? And he's like, well, because apparently it's common. And now that I've been
hugely common.
Yeah. And, because that was like my my first real startup serious tech job. And I'm like, dude, that doesn't compute to me. I can tell you down to the IP address where everything is. Right. To this day, I still can.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I don't know the IP address, but I built an XM radio.
That's right.
Or if we go back to like we were saying, but before 2014, 15, and everybody was like, oh, you can't put that in the cloud. The cloud's not secure. And I was like, do you know the provenance of every processor and every server you have? No, Google does, AWS does. I'm sure Microsoft does as well. So does Oracle. So does Cloudflare now, right? It's part and parcel of what they do to be an effective management tool within there. The other thing, and we've joked around about this, is like whatever you're using to, for your code repository, Git is obviously a huge one. We talk about, excuse me, we talk about rebasing, right? And because it's what I do is I get out in front of people largely and talk about things. I talk about people rebasing your life, right? Because when you rebase, and there, as you know, there's a few good reasons to rebase. I don't think there's many, but I think there's a few good reasons, right? But when you're going to rebase, you have to document those reasons very, very tightly, right? I think it's hugely important. But for the most part, people rebase because they want to hide their mistakes, right? We made a huge mistake. Let's hide it. Let's rebase. All right. Well, think about that as a life, put that in life skill perspective, right? I want to see how you fail, right? In life, I want to see how people fail. It's hugely fascinating to me because your ability to fail, recover from failure, right? And grow. And it's taken me a long time to contemplate this and get there in my personal life. I look at failure as feedback. Right? Once you get to that, you can grow as a human. You can grow as a company. People that come in and want to buy your company, want to invest in your company, especially when you want to invest. I want to see what mistakes you've made in the past, and I want to see how you've recovered from them. I want to look at your ingenuity. I want to look at your resiliency processes. How mentally, socially, and structurally in that company have you gotten better as a result of failure? Because everybody's going to fail, right? Nobody's perfect, right? And how we recover from that and how we move forward are hugely important. I'll give you an example. So when I was a SEAL, we go to driving schools all the time, right? And depending on what you were doing, it would be off-road driving, it would be track racing, it would be motorcade type driving and stuff like that. There was one of the guys would always come in. His average finish in anything we did as a race, right? Because life's a race. He would always be second or third. And then other people would be around him, and wildly all over the place. He would then go, well, I've never spun out a car in my life. Well, every driving school you go to is set up for you to spin out a car. Either you go into the tall grass, you go into the gravel so you don't put a car on the wall. And these training tracks are all geared towards you not going into the wall in turn 4. Right? I'd get after him all the time. Like, you really don't know what your limits are. Right. You haven't taken that one step too far to fail in a controlled fashion. Right. When you look at the tech side, right, finance side's easy. When you look at the tech side of growing a company, it's all about controlled failure and how I recover from that to have bigger success. Right. And if you think about that personally in your life, how do you rebase your life? Why would you rebase your life? You can't. You made those mistakes. You can try to cover them up. And I'm not saying you got to run out and say, I was a dummy today. Right. But when you have the opportunity to lead from the position, hey, I'm going to help you try to shorten that mistake tree by saying, hey, we've done this repeatedly. Don't do this again. That's going to really hurt. You're going to kick something's going to jump out and hurt your leg or whatever, right? Or your mind or your heart or whatever, right? There's physical mistakes, there's mental mistakes, and there's emotional mistakes, right? Let's try to collapse that. And I want you to look at my life repository and go in and see how I recovered. That's what good leaders do, right? That's where the thing. But technically, we start out with, I want to hide it all. And that's when we were back at the other company, that's what they were busy trying to do. Oh, you guys can't come in and see. You won't understand it, right? I always love that. You won't understand it. Well, if I don't understand it, it's your job to explain it to me.
That's right. That's right.
Even if it's my life. Right?
The funniest thing about that I've ever seen was I was at this AFCEA conference, I don't know how many years ago. I think I've told Jason the story. So
I've been to a few of these. Yeah.
But so
I think we all have.
Yeah, so they had this thing on when this was DISA coming in to wind up taking over like a bunch of different systems. They're going to basically be the managed service provider for a lot of. They're trying to get that for a lot of the armed forces. So the Army has decided they're moving to DISA, and I don't remember what the guy's name was from the Army because he basically didn't sound too good. But he said DISA is great. They came in, they found like 1,000 servers we didn't even know we had. So General Nally, who at the time was the CIO for the Marine Corps, who Ray was reporting to for quite a while, who now you both know Kevin, he's the CIO at the Secret Service. He looks at him and he goes, "What'd you say? They found how many?" He goes, "If I said that to my superior officer, he would probably shoot me in my chest."
Yeah.
He's like, "What do you?"
At least take away your lunch money until you go home.
You didn't even know about. This is, the Army, and you had just admitted you don't know what's going on.
Right.
How can you protect it if you don't know what's there?
One of the places that somebody reached out to me and said, "Hey, we don't have a network map. We're not sure if we know where everything's at." And they had recently let go of the top level of their thing because the information had gone missing and they had no choice, right? You put the CEO was put in a position to A, I'm going to have to alert the board, and B, I'm going to have to then further say we're incompetent right now. And that's the net of it, right? And so what am I doing? Well, I got rid of those guys, right? Well, then it was, hey, how do we figure this out? And so I got a call from the COO, and they said, hey, we're like, how can you help me out? And I said, I got a guy. And so we sent Stoney over there, and the nobody that had ever been to the company that had been let go or left of their own volition had their access revoked. And yeah, I know. Hey, look at you, both of you just like had a mild cardiac incident, right? But on top of that, the two folks that have been let go had a God certificate on their machine, so they didn't have to log into anything. Right. And they weren't requiring MFA. I mean, it was like the scariest thing imaginable. And Stoney called me and he was like, well, what do I do? I'm like, you just go in there, rebuild them, tell them the truth. Mm-hmm. Right. And the truth will set you free. But you and I both know that that's not out of the norm.
No, it's not.
Right. It's getting better because now there's a highlight, we're placing such a premium on cybersecurity and highlights in there every day of the week. Right. But you go back 4 or 5 years, and it was black magic to a lot of executive teams and a lot of boards, right? And that CEO at the time didn't get rid of those people because he wanted to. He got rid of them because it was going to be him or them, right? And he took the route of least. Hey, I'm going to have a job, right? Because I'm sorry, how are you going to survive the interview process when you go for your next job when it's like, well, why'd you lose your job? Right? However you church that up, somebody's going to figure it out because the tech community is not that huge where if a CEO gets let go, everybody doesn't know about it. Right. And why? So, but yeah, it's crazy to me when people just go, yeah, I'm pretty much sure I don't know where everything's at in my environment.
Well, so I'll finish with this because I got to get going. So I'm building this cyber lab out, which is attached to a classroom. And the classroom has 36 stations in it for students. Okay. Wow. And each station has 2 Ethernet runs. So it's decent size. And when we were negotiating with this company to run all the Cat 6 for me, I made it very clear that I wanted every single cable on both ends labeled. And I wanted it labeled according to a very specific scheme. The table, the workstation going clockwise, starting from this direction, and the number of the interface from left to right on the back, 1 and 2, right? Very simple scheme. And they're like, why do you want to do that? It's going to be like extra money. I'm like, that's why. Because I don't know when I'm going to need it. But there's probably going to be a situation in which I'm on one side of the room or the other and not the other. And I want to know which machine this is. That's simple. So, and if you do it now, it takes 5 minutes. What?
When you were standing clockwise, were you doing it from the north side or the south side?
South side.
Jason, you did expect that, right? You knew he sat up in his chair for the first time in a while. It was like, pick me.
Yep. Oh yeah, you see it coming. But that's thinking about what I would need tomorrow, even if I can't define what it is. That's especially in that case, dude. You're already crimping the ends on. Just take your little marker, and they did. It's not always like the most legible thing, but at least you can distinguish it from the other 16 cables or whatever per station.
Right.
And we're good to go, man. Now you don't have to worry about it. You always know what cable you're touching.
And that's, I mean, there's a reason why when you're working in the government, they have different colors so you know which network you're on.
Right? Yeah, right, exactly.
The background color. And so I can't tell you how many times at the last bank I was at, someone would take the system down. And I'm like, how the hell did you do that? Oh, I thought I was the test environment. How many times I got to tell you to change the friggin' background on the wallpaper and make colors? I mean, right. I'm not saying this because for my health, so you don't make that stupid mistake. So I would just blast them, and I eventually said, look, I'm going to check on Monday. I'm going to go to every single server we have, and if there's one wallpaper that is not this color, whoever's responsible for it, I'm walking out. Because I've now asked for this 3 times.
And it's a security violation, right? Yeah. I mean, it's not like this isn't hard, right? I mean, I think when you look at and I don't know how it works today because I'm nowhere near being involved in it, but before I retired, the government was kind enough to have multiple computers, right? Because we've talked about this segregated security model, I think is anachronistic now, but you had one for Nipper, one for SIPR, one for high side. And then they'd have a KVM box because they were too cheap to buy you 3 monitors and 3 keyboards, right? So now you had to try not to F this up, right? Really, you're putting some cognitive burden on dudes to do this right, and then you're blaming them when it goes wrong, right?
Right.
Well, again, it was, hey, when I go to the high side, it was a color of red for the background that would make me airsick.
Yeah.
Right. But how quickly can I open the browser to get it out of my face? Right.
Right.
When you move that forward now, and this is where, like you said, network mapping, even down to labeling all the cables. Right. You both know that I have more than a little bit of healthy OCD problems.
I wouldn't quite call it healthy.
Well, but when I was overseas and the guys were moving from A to B to a new office, they were almost trying to shield me from helping out, right? Because they were really proud of what they're doing, and they're just awesome folks, and they were like, it's our thing and we're doing it. But I finally said I'll help out. Well, they had the server closet and an empty rack, and I was like, let's bring this stuff. I'll help out. And one of the partners said about one of the other partners, who manages that for them. He says, well, he's very specific about what he does, and I'm like, perfect, because we're gonna get along great then. Right. And everything at both ends, little ties, and we took to, label gun and everything to get it to where it is. Why? Because when you have a problem, I don't want to have to think about it. And if I've got to replace one cable, because that's what actually goes bad, I don't want it to be 8 ways from Sunday. The bad problem is when you get people that, and this is a bigger problem, I think, in the government than elsewhere. Actually, no, I can't say that. Everybody has that mid-level person that just will do whatever a boss says, regardless of whether it's sensible or not, because they don't have the backbone to say, hold on a second. They want to deliver good news and they want to say yes. If you go into most SCIFs, for example, they'll have even the jack, the cable jack in the wall will be colorized. So they'll be green, red, white, right? Well, we had an instance in one of the companies I was working from where one of the executives wanted to be in the SCIF doing something, and they got there, and the non-secure, the open internet cable, that hole that was broken. So they went back to the server. They went back to the server where everything, and they moved it around and said, just plug it in for this. And they plugged it into the red, which is high side, right? They forgot to undo it after the meeting was over, right? They fixed the problem now, and then they go back, right? Well, one of my guys was in there and plugs into the high side, thinking it's the high side, and all of a sudden, boom! Our friends up in Northern Virginia are literally on the phone 2 minutes later, all right? And they're like, and it becomes an incident. And then the person that did it was the guy's name who accidentally, he didn't accidentally, who plugged into the correct hole, but wasn't the thing. They were calling it the Angelo incident, right? Because this one guy's naming it that to shield. And finally I went in, I go, Angelo, one more time, he calls it that, you go to HR. I said, because what he's trying to do is shield it. And I threw a big stink. But there was a cool thing I found out about. Like, this dude had machines that had viruses all over it. They weren't viruses that were found by a very high quality antivirus product. These were the ones that are let to roam around for a while to circulate, right? But I mean, it's amazing how quickly in that environment it was found out. And it wasn't, technically we didn't do anything wrong. We did it emotionally wrong.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Boss says he wants something, and I'm too scared, or I get some other words for it, but I'm too scared to jump in the middle and go, hold on a second, this is going to take a minute because there's a potential security violation. And again, Dan, it goes back to what you were talking about at the middle. When you walk in the boardroom, people want answers and they want the right thing to happen. And if you walk in and I say, hey, I understand everything that you want, but if I do it with the haste that you're asking me to do it, we're going to do it incorrectly in the long run. Give me 5, 10, 20 minutes. And yes, I know it's an inconvenience, but it's worth the time and effort because everybody has to understand, here's the consistency of how we're successful.
Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like right when I leave here, and Jason, I know you got to go, so I'll close with this. But I was speaking at a conference in Manhattan on Wednesday, and they asked, like, well, what are we doing in order to make security inside of everyone IT? I said, you know what? Where I got to go today, I've got everyone that touches any system. They're all going through CompTIA Security Plus training this weekend. So I brought CompTIA in. They were all there all day yesterday. They're there all day today. And then tomorrow night, so they can have all of the training for Security Plus. And then they have a year of all the computer-based training videos, so they can go past it. So now everyone at least has a basic understanding. So when Sprinkles talks about something, they all know, oh, that's what that means.
Right. And more importantly, what you've done is you've gotten accountability. Yeah. Right? It's one thing to say, hey, don't do this. It's another thing to say, hey, I'm going to train you the proper way not to do it. So now when you do it, I can hold you accountable. And that's more important than even the knowledge base. I'm a big
the same way. And that's a big part of it.
And now you've gotten a common vernacular across the organization that everybody can talk from, which ultimately helps your resiliency model. I think that's awesome.
So it's and I didn't have any pushback in doing this. I mean, this is not cheap to go get this amount of people trained.
Right.
But it's worth it, right?
It absolutely is.
How are we spending our money, right? And that's that old adage, the CFO says, hey, what if we train all our people and they leave? And what if we don't and they stay?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
And I think how many times have you ever learned anything and in the moment you might not have wanted to sit in the class or learn it, where you walked out and go, man, I wish I could just empty my brain of that.
Right.
A couple of times.
Of course.
And I'm like, what the hell is that guy talking about?
That's somebody that's, inflated sense of themselves getting in front of you saying, hey, look, listen to me. I know everything. I'm talking about actual knowledge.
But there's a teachable moment there too, because you can realize I don't ever want to be that dude.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Don't do that.
Don't be that guy. Yeah. Which guy? I don't know what it is, but in any occasion, there's always the opportunity to be that guy.
Right.
Absolutely.
All right, my friends, I got to run. Next Sunday.
Yep.
Same time, same channel.
You got it. Take care, everybody. Have a great week.
Drop a Metropolis reference for Dan.
All right, my friends. Later.
Take care, everybody. Cheers. Bye-bye.